Using the weighted sum feature on the PoE trade website is an extremely powerful way to find items in Path of Exile to get exactly what you need, but also to code in flexibility so you can occasionally grab a really affordably priced items that you might not have otherwise been able to search for. In fact, if we go to the original Path of Exile 1 trade site, so here we are, pathofexile.com/trade/search/settlers. And let's say in PoE 1, we were kind of getting started early league and we wanted to search for some good items. Nothing too crazy, but let's say we wanted like some good life and some good resistances. All right, so I'm going to come down here and I'm going to start adding some stats onto the items I'm searching for. Now, one huge difference that you'll notice on the PoE 1 trade site, if I go to add stat filter, as soon as I click it, we get this big column of all of these things called pseudo mods. Now, I know that a lot of people that are watching PoE YouTube right now are new to Path of Exile. They never played PoE 1 and they're just starting on PoE 2. There's a really big difference. There's something missing, something lacking from the PoE 2 trade site. And it's these pseudo mods. I'm going to basically do two things in this video. I'm going to show you how to recreate like pretty much any one of these pseudo mods, which are super for searching. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use these examples to demonstrate just how powerful weighted sum trading is if you've just never used it ever before in doing any trading in Path of Exile. It's something I've known about for a long time, but in PoE 2, it's like especially needed. And I just started really leveraging it hard, and I should have been doing it a lot earlier. In fact, there's this kind of new YouTuber named The Farmer who's been making a whole bunch of videos about just how powerful weighted sum trading is. So shout out to this YouTuber. All of these videos are excellent. I highly recommend you check any of them out. So well done, by the way, to this person. And after using some weighted sum trading for about a week or two, and then today going through and watching all this guy's videos, I wanted to go ahead and toss my hat into the ring and make probably 2 videos on this subject. I truly believe that if you watch one or both of these videos, it really is going to save you time in the future. And so in this first video, let's just focus on how powerful this method is, why it's so powerful. And then for PoE 1 players also, I'm going to show you how to recreate all these pseudo mods that you used to use on the PoE 1 trade site. And we're going to talk about why these are so powerful. Okay, so first thing, let's just start by just recreating one of the most probably commonly used pseudo mods, which is just total resistances and also life. So like I said, let's simulate, we're playing Path of Exile. Let's say we're playing PoE 1. And we're looking for some kind of early end game gear. So I want some life on my gear. So I'm going to type life in here. I'm going to look at this pseudo mod that I pretty much always used in PoE 1. And it's called pseudo plus number to total maximum life. So let's say I wanted like 100 life minimum to add to my character. Okay, then let's say I wanted some resistances on my gear. So I'm going to type res, and then we get all these pseudo mods. And I'll just start with this total elemental resistances. I think total resistances, I think it includes chaos resistance. Okay, so I'm going to set a minimum 100 of total maximum life that I'm getting from the item. And then I'm going to type in res to get my resistance pseudo mod. And I'm just going to do plus number percent to total resistance. And let's set that to like 120. Let's get it. And then we hit enter, and this is what we see. So for PoE 1 players, I know this is going to be a little bit boring, but just stick with me here, or feel free to skip forward a little bit. For those new to this, if we start scrolling through all these items, here's what we see. If we look down at the bottom of each item, it's going to show, so for example, this pseudo mod, the total maximum life is telling me that it's 115 total. If we look at the affixes on the gear, we see there's 115 to maximum. If we look now at the total resistance pseudo mod, we've got 121% total resistances. And if we look and we add these up, we got a 44, 45, and a 32, a fire, cold, and a lightning res. And these are going to add up to the total of 121 total. So this pseudo mod makes it really easy to search for like any possible combination of these elemental resistance values. I think this should also include chaos, if I'm not mistaken, for the total res pseudo mod. And there's not really any other particularly way to do this using just like the standard search features or even the count search feature, which I'll also probably talk about in this video. Let's scroll down and look at a couple. Yep. So basically every item that's coming up here is going to have a really high maximum life roll. And it's also going to have probably either 2 really well rolled res rolls. So I chose this 120 for a very specific reason because, and then this one also has on the implicit, it has 12% to all elemental resist. So this is going to translate to a 36% total elite res plus these 2 right here. And these 2 are like really well rolled. These are both tier 1 affixes. So you can see we've got a little bit over 90 here, and then we've got 36 here, and this is what it gives you. It gives you 131. So then you can basically just scroll through the items, and it makes it really easy to search and find gear that is pretty good for, say, early end game, let's say. And so if you just keep scrolling through it, you'll always just find the same thing, which is that it always has these types of rolls. Let's look at this total max life roll one now for a second. So let's go back. Let me lower the total res a little bit. So let's say I only need like maybe 60. So I'll probably have to have at least like 2 affixes, I think 60, if I'm not mistaken. And then let's crank this total maximum life way up. Let's say I want like 180 total maximum life. All right, so now what are we gonna see? So now if we look at these items, okay, I'm still getting my total resistances. So I've got a 35 and I've got a 15% to both cold and chaos. So this pseudo mod, it also includes chaos resistance. If I'm not mistaken, there's a way to also do it where it's only elemental resistances, but this one also includes chaos. So we've got 15 cold, 15 chaos. That's a total of 30 plus 35 more cold resistance. And so it's added all these up, summed it all together, and we get our 65% total. What about this total maximum life roll? I only have a maximum life roll of 143, but because strength also gives you maximum life, this is the same in PoE 2, right? If I'm not mistaken, I haven't really played, I'm not playing a strength build, but this is the same in PoE 2, right? And life is super important if you are playing any kind of like melee pure strength type build. So this is a really common pseudo mod that you would use, where it's going to take the 143 max life you're getting just from the straight life roll, and then it's going to calculate how much life you're getting from the strength rolls on the item, and then it adds all of that together, and then it creates this pseudo mod. And then a nice thing too, if you really want to, you can like click on these pseudo mods to check and see like the best possible items where it like adds life and strength together potentially. And so we'll see here now in PoE 1, of course, these are these crazy mirrored gears. This is going a little bit too far off the deep end, but I just want to point out just how useful these pseudo mods are. So I've used these a ton in PoE 1, and I guarantee pretty much any big PoE 1 player has used these a lot. Let's go back and look at that example of that first item. If we sort by price again, and it brings us back to that original item. So the way that the pseudo mod is calculated is it's taking this 143 to maximum life, and then it's taking the total strength, which here it's 85 total strength. All right, in Path of Exile 1, every 2 strength grants an additional 1 maximum life. So that's how we end up with 185. We got 143 plus, around 80-ish. So we divide, let's say 84 by 2, we get 42, and that gives you the 185, and they went ahead and actually had the decimal also. So 185.5 is the exact number when you add 143, and then you take the strength and divide it by 2. These are the 2 pseudo mods that I've used the most in PoE 1. There are other useful ones. I'm going to talk about at least these 2 in this video. I may do 1 or 2 more. Because here's the problem. Now we come over to Path of Exile 2, which most people have been playing. And obviously we want to do the same thing, and we want to use the same types of searches because they're very powerful. But the problem is now we type in life, and as you can see, there's a little bit of an issue here. We've got number to maximum life, but there are no, correct me if I'm wrong, people, unless I'm making a huge mistake in this video, I cannot find any pseudo mods in PoE 2, and it makes it a little bit rough when you want to do these types of searches. Because how would we recreate, for example, searching for the elemental resistance? So if I type res, all I have options for is just to select cold res, fire res, lightning res. We also have all res, and I think that's basically all we have. We also have chaos res. So let's say I wanted to try to recreate this myself. How would I do? And let me show you what I did when I first started, which worked well, but it's just not good enough. So when I first started PoE 2, I knew it wasn't going to be good enough to do all these searches manually. So so let's start selecting some of these. So let's do like cold res. We'll manually put fire res on there and manually put lightning and elemental to all elemental resistances, and let's also put chaos resistance on there. And then in PoE 2, I think they've gotten rid of combined resistances, so we don't need to worry about those. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure those just got removed out of the game. Okay, so we've manually inputted all these different types of resistances. Now, if you go up here and click this little button up right here on the top right, you click this, it tells you what type of search you're doing. This is an AND search. It means that all of them have to be present. Obviously, this is not what we want because you can't have all 5 on the same item at once. We're not interested in not, we're not interested in if. What I started with is I started with count when I first started playing. So I would do count, and I would put in like maybe a 2 count on some items, or maybe I put a 3 count on some items. Then I would go in and I would put the minimums in. So let's say I wanted to try to duplicate, for example, like getting at least 60 elemental resistance on an item. I think basically the only way you can really do this with count is you would go through and you'd put in, for example, you could do like minimum of 20 each of the individual resistance ones. You could put like an 8 here for all res, and you could put a 20 for chaos res. Good luck. And let's do this. Let's just go ahead and do this search. So it means I have to have a count of at least 3 of these, and each one of these mods is going to guarantee me I get at least 20. Thus, I'm guaranteed to get at least 60 total res. And if I go ahead and do the search, this is what we see. And we're going to find that we're going to have always exactly 3 mods, and we're going to be getting an addition of these. We can't see what it is anywhere because no pseudo mod here. But if we go through all these items, we see that they each have 3 of these mods. They're always going to be at least 20. And therefore, no matter what the combination is, because there's a lot of combinations is the problem. No matter what the combo is, it's always going to be guaranteed. We're going to get at least 60. And to be honest, this worked very well for me. Like I was very happy and I was very content using this. And I was getting all the items I needed and they're all pretty good. But we can do better than that. In fact, actually much better than that. Because this has limitations and it has problems, obviously. The problem with this is the minimum 20. What if you have an item that has like, for example, a really good fire resistance roll total of, let's say, 45 fire resist, then you don't need the full 20 if you're just trying to get to 60. And also, this is forcing a count of 3, and we want it to also be able to consider a count of 2 items. So we want to consider items that have 2 affixes of really, really well-rolled resistances, or like 3 affixes of resistances that are like 20-ish. And unfortunately, I don't think there's really any other way to do this easily in Path of Exile 2 other than using the weighted sum feature. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So hopefully you see kind of what the limitations are and why this type of search is going to be so powerful to recreate basically any type of pseudo mod you want. Let me hammer it home one more time and give credit to where credit's due. Again, this person on YouTube, The Farmer, has been making absolutely incredible YouTube videos, well done, and really focusing on kind of trading and doing a lot of discussion of using this weighted sum searching. And he actually put out basically like the perfect argument for why this is so powerful. So one of the examples he showed in his video is another type of search that you can do is you're searching for a specific type of magic item. So he was searching for bows, and he basically wanted to find magic bows that had like 2 affixes, so 1 prefix and 1 suffix, and he wanted them to basically both be really good and really powerful and well rolled. And he pointed out that if you wanted to do these individual searches, where, for example, you can see here, sorry, it's probably pretty blurry, but maybe if I maximize this, it's a little better. You can see he's got, for example, he's searching for increased physical damage and he's searching for increased attack speed, all of which being, pretty well rolled. But he's also got, if you see here, for example, plus 20% to critical damage bonus. So we have more than 2 possible mods, but we can only have 1 prefix and 1 suffix. And so how do you do this in the trade website? Now, interestingly enough, you actually don't necessarily totally have to do this with weighted sum. You could actually kind of do this with count. So for example, if I put count 2, and I have a list of like 20 mods, then and I specify in the search that I'm only looking for magic items, it will basically do this combinatorial search where it'll include any one of the prefixes or any one of the suffixes, again, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not going to fully test out every edge case of what I'm talking about, but I'm pretty sure it's correct. But once again, the same as in the case with the elemental resistances, it's not really like a fully optimized, because it doesn't take into consideration how well rolled the affixes are rolled. It's just getting over the combinatorial nature of searching a bunch of possible combinations, but it's not analyzing how well rolled the affixes are. So while yes, maybe you could do this with the count feature, it's still always just going to be better to do it with the weighted sum feature, in my opinion. And this is why this guy's had so much success making tons of money off of doing trading on the trade site. And he follows up this example by perfectly pointing out the exact math of how many possible separate searches you'd have to do. And he even talks about another example where he was doing a search where you would have to literally enter into the trade site and do 792 different tabs of different searches to analyze all the possible combinations of different types of affixes if you were coming back to the trade site and you were using something like a and type search. I don't think he ever considered count search, but it doesn't matter. It's not really a big deal. So the point of all this is the power of the weighted sum search. The weighted sum search basically removes all of these problems of all of the combinatorial nature, which count kind of addresses the combinatorial nature. You could just use count if you're kind of lazy. You can use count, but it's just not going to be as good as weighted sum, because weighted sum overcomes the case where count doesn't take into account. Nope. Okay, let me reword that. The count feature does not consider the cases, like I said, where you go below, where you want to recreate one of these PoE 1 type pseudomods of just total elemental resistance, and the cold res could be like 1, and you can still hit 60 total between the. And so yeah, as far as I know, you just can't do it with count. You just have to start moving forward to weighted sum. There are 2 types of weighted sums listed here. I'm still trying to totally figure out the difference between these. I've read a PoE 1 dev talk about it, and amazingly, it's still not really exactly seeing why you would use one over the other. I usually just always choose V2, but I don't think it matters. Maybe I'll talk about that more in a future video. You should be able to choose either, and it's not going to make a difference. All right, so now let's move on, and let's start recreating some of these Path of Exile 1 pseudomods so we can start recreating searches like this in Path of Exile 2 to save ourselves a lot of time and effort and pain when we're trying to do these easy searches. So let's start with probably the king of all pseudo type searches, which is the +% to total resistances. All right, so we're going to come over to the trade site in Path of Exile 1. We're going to come back over to the PoE 2 trade site. We're going to change our search type to the weighted sum search type. Shouldn't matter V1 or V2. And then instead of using min and maxes, we're going to start using these weightings. Sorry if some of this is going to overlap a little bit with, for example, the farmer's YouTube videos, but it is what it is. And I'm planning on making a second follow-up video to this where I'm going to go into more complex examples. and talk about some other things that he didn't talk about of other ways I think this can save you a ton of time across multiple leagues. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, we're going to set a number 1 to each of these individual resistances. So this is our weight. So let's just stop it there and let's do the search. So let's say I have set the weight, this is called the weight. Let's say I set it to 1 on cold, fire, and lightning resistance. And then I come up here to this top box for the weighted sum search. And let's say I did a minimum of, let's say 80. And let's say I go ahead and do the search. All right, so we are now in the PoE 2 trade site. And now we have recreated what looks almost exactly identical to the pseudo search from Path of Exile 1. So we see an item pop up. It has 30, 35, and 33, and you see now this weighted sum of 98. It's giving each of these values a weight of 1, so a weight of 30, 35, and 33, and when you add them all together, you get a weight of 98, and so this is a 98 total resistance item. If we scroll down, we're going to see the same thing for all of these, 30, 36, and 15, some of 81, etc., etc. Hopefully you can understand that. This is like the most simple possible example. Let's go ahead and go back to our filters, and let's make this a full perfect search. So if each of these is a weight of 1, which means you get 1 total resistance, if we do a percent to all elemental resistance, every time you get 1 stat of this, 1% to all elemental resistances, you're getting a total of 3 resistance. So we're going to give this a weight of 3. All right, chaos should have just also gotten a 1. If you want to include chaos, add chaos in here, give it a 1. If you're only looking for elemental resistances and you don't care about chaos resistance, then just remove it. All right, so now let's do the search again. Let's up the value a little bit. Let's say we want 120 total of any type of elemental or chaos resistance. Let's do the search, and here's what we get. So you can spend literally 1 alchemy orb and you can get 130 total resistance. This item has plus 10% to all elemental resistances, so that's going to be 30, plus 40 is 70, plus 33 is a total of 103. And then, okay, something actually not working here because these actually add up to more than 130. Yeah, so it's actually not taking into account the implicit on the item. Okay, so actually let's fix that. I would have put this out without putting this in this video, so this is actually kind of lucky that we caught that. Okay, so if we type implicit into the trade, then we get this. This is how you consider implicits on items like the ring that we just saw. So let's go ahead and add these in here. So let's put the implicit here. We saw that this item did take everything into account correctly. So we have about 60 here for all res plus 40 plus 33 is about 130. Well, it's exactly 130, but it didn't take into the implicit. So let's go through and let's add the implicits in. All right, so I'll go through and add these in here. Chaos, cold. Okay, and here's fire. So that's all the possible implicits. So we're going to go back and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to give everything a weight of 1 if it's just a 1 resistance. And then for this one where you get 3 at the same time, we're going to put a 3 here. So now we have what should be the perfect recreation of the pseudo mod. There may still be some unique mods possibly on like a unique item or something that maybe you might have to consider, but I think this is pretty much good enough to start with. This is more or less recreating the pseudo mod. All right, and let's crank this up even higher. Let's see if we can get this ring back in here. This is 130 and it had 30 more. So let's make this like 159 and let's do the search. And here's what we get. Now we get the same ring that we just saw, and now it is taking the implicit into account correctly. So we've got 30 here plus the original 130, and now we have the perfect sum of 160. We have recreated the pseudo mod more or less perfectly. Like I said, there still may be a couple weird edge or corner cases where this might not work exactly perfectly. So if that's the case, you may have to just work out a couple of those exact situations. And now we're seeing a bunch of these rings and stuff like that with resistances because we're searching for really high resistance stuff. And actually, like if you're playing the game right now, maybe you might want to, you can look and see these types of items are actually very valuable. Basically, every single one of these items, other than this first ring, which is literally going for 1 alchemy orb, which is maybe not even a legit listing. I don't know, maybe it's fake, or maybe nobody's figured out how to do this type of search yet. I'm not going to mess with it. But if it is a legit offering, you could basically buy this and then probably relist it for like 1 divine and make a divine orb pretty right there. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I will try to answer as much as I can. This should be the recreation of the LE resistance pseudo mod. I'll also try to put a link to this search into the description for this, so you can just click on it to just pull this right up and start using it if you want to use it. Okay, so let's go ahead and go through one more full case example of recreating, for example, the life pseudomod in Path of Exile 1. So as I mentioned before, the total maximum life pseudomod from PoE 1, it takes into account your strength, it divides it by 2 because that adds to life, and then it's plus the life value. And so let's actually just recreate a search like this where we're doing both of them. So I'm searching for a pseudomod of plus total resistances and a pseudomod of plus total maximum life. So what we would do is we would come here to the trade we just did. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to open it up in a new tab. So like this. All right, so we've recreated this search by reopening this trade link. And then I'm going to add a second stat. So when you add a second stat group, it has to have this condition met of the first stat group, and then it also has to meet the condition of the second stat group. So now let's do weighted sum v2. Again, so we're putting a second weighted sum in. So both of these weighted sums have to be met. And now we're going to start doing life. So let's start searching for life mods. Basically, we're looking for number to maximum life. But as I just figured out in the last one, and I almost screwed up in this video, I need to go ahead and search for the implicits also. And let's just make sure that there's no implicits for maximum life. There it is right there. Total. Okay, so it's number to maximum life of the implicit. There we go. So each one of these is going to get a weight of 1 because every time you increase this stat, you get 1 more maximum life. And then the other thing you would do is search for strength if you were, for example, recreating the PoE 1 way of doing it. And you would do number to strength here. And then here, the weight is going to change a little bit. So you need 2 of these points to get to 1 maximum life. So the weighting here is going to be 0.5. And then let's go ahead and grab the final implicit and go ahead and find a strength. And here we go, plus to maximum strength implicit. And we're going to do 0.5 again. Okay, and I almost forgot again, there's also all attribute. Okay, so if we search all attributes, we see these. So we've got an explicit all attributes and an implicit all attributes. Once again, this is going to be a 0.5 because it's going to give you 1 strength per. So I've got the regular version. Now let's get the implicit, throw that in there, put a 0.5 on there. Now there may be some limitations here once again. So for example, I don't remember exactly how the PoE1 pseudo search works on this, but for example, if you look at explicit here, we can see that there's this like number % increased strength. This would technically also have an effect on your total life gain if you're gaining life based on strength and life affect, because no matter what, it's at least going to affect the strength on the item itself. I don't actually know quite how this works. So this is, once again, this is kind of another corner case. There's always going to be these sort of corner cases. It's kind of up to you how you want to deal with this. You could think about potentially putting this in also. Maybe you use like the strength of your character, like you know that your character already has 100 strength. So if you already have 100 strength, then every time you gain 1%, you're also gaining 1 strength. And so you could put, for example, a 0.5 here. You could do something like this as well. I'm going to remove this from the search, but if you watch this video, you'll know that you could include something like this also, and it should work pretty much exactly the same. So if I wanted to go recreate this PoE1 pseudo search where I have 180 total maximum life and 60 total resistances, I would come back over here. I would go to my recreated pseudo search for resistances. I'd put in a 60 here, and then I would come down here to my second one, and I would put my 80 in here, or sorry, 180. So there's my 180 and 60 resistances. Let's go ahead and do the search. We're searching on PoE2, and here's what we find. We get an item like this, which has just a flat 218 maximum life. And then we also have our 77 resistances, and we can see that everything is working perfectly. And it also does this nice recreation where it's functioning and showing you these different sums almost exactly like you were searching in PoE1. I honestly think, correct me if I'm wrong here, y'all, we're getting to the end of the video. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments. Surely this helped some of you and is going to save you some time, because I think a search that is advanced as this, if you were actually looking for a search like this, it should save you a ton of time. And if we go back, I'm not going to go through the full detailed gory process of all these pseudos, of all the rest of them, but let's look at a couple of them. Okay, if you wanted to do a pseudo search to recreate total to strength, how would you do that? You'd basically go through the explicits and implicits that add number to strength, and you would also add the ones that do additions to all attributes. So this is basically more simple than the life search. Okay, maximum mana. Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, this is going to be basically taking into consideration the intelligence and then also flat mana roll. So it would be basically the same thing as the life, except instead of life, it's flat mana, and instead of strength, it's intelligence. Anyone feel free to correct me if I make any small mistakes on some of these things. I think some of these, I never really used them. Okay, things like these added flat damage types, they basically just add a couple different mods together that do these. So I think hopefully if you follow this video up this far and we look through all these pseudo mods, I think you should pretty much be able to figure out how to recreate these. Okay, you basically find the associated mods and different affixes that can potentially add together to give you, and then you basically weight them accordingly, and then you figure out the final weight that you're looking for. It'll be nice once PoE2 has some of these pseudo mods, because there's all these kind of weird ones also that may have niche use cases. But for now, I think you can pretty much use what I've shown you to surely recreate just about any trade you're interested in. I will leave a link to also this type of trade for this PoE1 life and resistances together pseudo mods, and then I'll put a final one in the description where it's just life 1. Strength works the same in PoE2, right? It still gives life 2 to 1, right? Okay, according to the wiki, strength gives +2 maximum life per 1 strength. All right, so let's go back and change this a little bit. So that means that here, instead of 0.5 for all these, instead of 0.5, these are all going to give us 2 life. So we'll just make that change since strength works a little bit differently. We'll redo the search. I'll come over here to my one that has both. I'll change this to 2 for all of these, and that should take care of this. I will put the links to all of these searches in the description. So if you click them, it should just open up in your web browser and you should be able to start using these. And all you have to do is change the total weight that you're looking for. And with that, hopefully I've accomplished everything that I have set about to do in this video. I have some notes on some other things that I want to talk about in my next video where I want to follow up. I'm going to talk about how you can do this to search for example, my character is evasion and energy shield. I think this is the only way you can basically search for items where it's okay if the item is really good in energy shield or really good in evasion. So I'm gonna show you that. I'm gonna walk through just gearing up my character with a couple items, and I'll show you how I come up with the specific weights for like more complex searches. Again, this is gonna overlap with some other people that have also done similar things. I'll just show you for my specific character, and I'm gonna try to talk through and walk through the whole process. So hopefully you can learn to do it for your own character. So whatever your build is, you'll be able to use what I talk about to recreate it. I'm also gonna talk about how you can use this across multiple leagues, gearing your character up as it goes along the league, which I think is gonna save people hours, tens or even hundreds, to be honest, if you play a lot, and a couple other random odds and ends that I didn't include in this video. So feel free to hit the subscribe. If you found this video useful and you're ready for a follow-up coming up probably later this week, consider hitting that like button, leaving a comment for the algorithm, or again, if you have any questions, go ahead and shoot them on down there. I'm happy to try to help a couple of people out if there's anything I can help with. And with that, I think that's pretty much a video. We'll wrap it up and come back with a little more next time. So I'll see y'all next time.